Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make this Art Deco beaded bracelet, and this is what mine looks like here. So I'm using SuperDuos as kind of the main feature in the piece to get this nice shape that's kind of Art Deco inspired, and then I'm using bicones and montees in the middle to add really nice bling to the piece as well. And obviously these are just the colours that I've chosen to use, and I finished off the ends with a regular clasp, so it looks like that. And then it can look a little something like this on, so give a really nice effect on the wrist there, but at the same time also being very comfortable to wear. So I came up with this bracelet from a kumihimo bracelet that I previously made. It looks like this here. So you have the kumihimo braid right in the middle, and then I added SuperDuos into the braid, but then added this embellishment on the side afterwards. And when I made this, I thought it would work really nicely as a beaded bracelet as well. So basically taking the braid away, and then I ended up with this. So if you want to learn how to make this beaded bracelet here, then keep watching. So these are then the materials that we're going to need. First of all, here the thread that I'm using is an S-lon size D in this white colour, because it's going to match nicely with especially the bicones, mainly because they're clear, so I don't really want a dark thread or something to show through. That's why I'm using this. And then alongside the thread I'm using these two beading needles. And then as for the beads here, first of all we have the SuperDuos, and these are basically the main beads. This specific colour that I'm using is Metallist Hot Pink, so they're really nice and bright. And then alongside them I'm using 11 Miyuki seed beads in just opaque black, and then also the tiniest ones here are 15 Miyuki seed beads, again in opaque black, so they match nicely with that bright colour. And then I have these two beads here to add in the bling. The first ones are 2.5mm Swarovski bicone beads in a crystal AB, and then these ones here are 4mm montees, also in crystal AB. But obviously you can combine your colours of all the beads however you want to. And then, just to finish it off, I'm going to use these wire protectors, one on each end. And then finally with the findings I have my locked claw clasp extender chain and my jump rings. So let's get all the materials together and let's get started. So I then cut a length of my thread here, and I'm using about a wingspan, so it's quite a length, but to make it easier to work with as well, I've added a needle to each end obviously, but then through the needles I put a decent tail through, so it's going to make it much more manageable to work with a longer length. But just make sure it's as even as possible with the tails, so we don't run out on one side before the other one. Then I'm going to take my needles here, and before we start with the beads, I'm just going to take one of my wire guards here. So I'm going to put a needle through each side with the U shape pointing towards me. So I'm going away from myself here, and just bring them through, because I'm going to use that wire guardian or wire protector to then attach our clasp once we've made the whole bracelet. So we've now got this attached, and our thread is ready to start adding in the beads. So I'm then going to get both the 15-ohs, 11-ohs and the SuperDuos ready here. I'm going to start with these three, and then what I want to do is, obviously having already added that wire protector, I then need to get from that to the next point. So I'm just going to start adding in 3 of the 11-ohs on each needle, and then another 3 on the other one here, because we need to get from that wire protector to basically the first SuperDuo. So add them, and then bring that all the way down to that wire protector, so they sit like that, basically continuing from the ends of it. And then we need to add our first SuperDuo. So I'm going to take one needle through one hole, and then I'm going to take the other needle through the other hole in the same SuperDuo, going in the same direction as well. Just get it through here. And then again you can bring this all the way down. And obviously we're gradually building this up as we go, so it sits like that. And now we basically want to get into the proper pattern as well. So what that's going to be on each needle is, we start with a 15-oh, and then I want to take 3 of my SuperDuos on the same one, and then also we finish with a 15-oh. So we have our 3 SuperDuos right there in between a 15-oh on each side. Let that drop down, and then I want to repeat the exact same thing on the other needle. So 1 15-oh, 3 SuperDuos, and then again finish on a 15-0. And you can also let that drop all the way down. So you can either keep pushing it down as you go. I do recommend doing it at least every now and then, because otherwise you can get really tangled up with the thread. But then we need to collect the two again. So that means we then need to go through the same SuperDuo with both needles, but in each their own hole, but again in the same direction. Just getting through the other one there. And then we can bring that all the way down as well, because then that kind of collects this little section in place. And it stays a bit better. So it's gonna, when we're making this, it's gonna kind of get a little bit muddled up as we go, because SuperDuos want to go all over the place, because we're only using one hole for now. So obviously these are kind of flopping around, in and out. But the main thing right now is just to add the beads that we need. And we can always kind of keep collecting it as we go, to make sure obviously we're doing it right. But also once we know we're getting to the length we need to double check how long we need this to be. So you basically just continue like this. Now the next section, before we can just start repeating everything, is from this SuperDuo where we collected it, there, we then need to have a little section without SuperDuos. So for that, we need to add 3 11-0s on each needle again. So that's basically what we did down here after the wire protector. And then again, to collect that, we need to go through the same SuperDuo with both needles in each their own hole. And then it's basically more or less every time I add in a SuperDuo where both my needles go through the same one, I like to make sure I bring it all down, just to kind of keep control over it. So you can see the SuperDuos are wanting to go all over the place, where we add them through one hole there, but just kind of keep adding them like this, because we now want to repeat the SuperDuo section. So you add 1 15-0, 3 SuperDuos and 1 15-0, and the same with the other needle, and then you keep repeating like this. So every other one you have the SuperDuo section, and every other one you have the 11-0 section there. And obviously it all depends how long you need this to be. So get to a decent length, and then we need to measure around the wrist, taking the clasp into account as well. So I now reached all the way to the other end here, and I finished on each thread there on the 3 11-0s, just how I started out as well, using that wire guardian. So that's also what I need to do on this end. We need to finish it off the same way, adding the other wire protector. So what I have here is, I have this ready, and it's going to obviously lay in the other direction. So I'm just going to take one needle at a time, and I'm going to go through that wire protector against the U, you could say. So it's going to lay down like this here, and then I'm going to come down the other side with the needle, and also then go straight through those seed beads on that side. And you can also go through the SuperDuo if you want to, and then pull that all the way through, just like this for now. And then we need to get the other needle and also go through this. So just bring it across, and then just need to grab the right one. It's coming out from the seed beads, so I need to go through the wire protector in the opposite side there, but in the same principle, going through one side, going around the U on the outside there, and then back down to the other side of the bracelet. So basically the needles are now swapped sides and the threads, and then what I want to do now is also go through all of this one more time. So we want to come all the way down to the other end. I could just pull this a little bit tight, grab hold of that wire protector while you're then pulling tight. You don't want to pull too tight on this, because they're going to buckle up more than they need to. We need to keep a little bit of looseness in this. Make sure they line nicely next to each other like this. So basically now what you want to do is take one needle at a time, and you just want to continue through this whole thing again. So stay on the side that the needle's coming out on, and just take a few beads at a time, remember those little 15-0s, go through that. Just need to get through it here, get to it, go through that, go through SuperDuos, in the exact same thread path really, all the way down to the other end, and make sure to do that with both of the needles, because it's going to just give it extra security that we want in the whole bracelet. So I then made it all the way down to the other end here, and I have one thread on each side coming out through that wire protector. And before I move on to the next step, I just want to make sure that I have the right tightness on this. So we obviously want to make sure we don't have any loose thread showing throughout the bracelet, but we also don't want to pull it too tight, because we need a little bit of slack in it so the SuperDuos will lay flat nicely without wanting to buckle up. So if we pull it too tight, they want to buckle up, and we obviously want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So just try and lay them out flat like this when we're at this step, so you make sure that you have the right tightness on your thread. But then otherwise, to get to the next step here, we need to get to the outer edge and fill in there. So I'm going to take one needle at a time. I'm just taking the bottom one first, and we need to bring them around the wire protector again, so basically the horseshoe shape. So come from the bottom, and then I go to the other side of it and go down through that side, and then also through 2 of the seed beads, but only 2 of them, because we then need the thread to come out in the right place for that next step. Pull it all the way down, so it just again goes into that well in the horseshoe shape. The same with the top one, bring it around to the bottom, and then also go through 2 seed beads below it. Pull it all the way through here, and again make sure that the thread goes into that well. So now we have the threads in the right position, and the next step is then first of all to get to the outer edge. So to do that we need to bring in some more beads. So I'm going to get my 15-0 seed beads ready, and then also my bicones here. So I have them ready for us to use, and then we need to get from that seed bead on the edge to the outer hole in the very first SuperDuo. And I'm just going to work on one side at a time here. So what I'm going to do is add 1 seed bead, and then 1 bicone, and 1 seed bead. So I have the bicone in the middle, and that's going to fit perfectly there. I'm just going to go through the outer hole in the very first SuperDuo on this bottom side that I'm starting to work on. And that sits perfectly there and kind of bridges that little gap, otherwise there'd be some thread showing and we don't want that. And then we're going to move on to the other side of these SuperDuos. So I'm basically going to go through each one at a time. So fill in the gaps between the SuperDuos, where I'm just going to add in 1 bicone here. We'll go right to the open hole in the next one. Pull that all the way through. That's going to fit in perfectly there. Take another bicone and go through the open hole in the last one out of these 3. And then that's how we're filling between them here. And then what we need to do is get to the next little section, you could say, of SuperDuos. But you can work kind of on one side at a time a little bit and then go up to the other one, or you can kind of work alongside each other. So I'm just going to go to the other side here. Completely up to you how you feel most comfortable. Add the same 1 seed bead, 1 bicone and 1 seed bead to get from that seed bead to the first SuperDuo. Again in the outer hole. And just so you can see as well how it's going to look in this first little section. And then to fill in between the SuperDuos, it's just 1 bicone and then jump to the next one. Oops. Pulling it out of position here. And then 1 bicone again. And jump to the next one in the outer hole. Because then I have both threads, you could say, in the same position to then get to that next section over there. So I'm just going to show you how I do that as well, because obviously that's a bigger gap we have to bridge rather than just between the SuperDuos. So for that we then need to add 2 of our seed beads, and then 1 bicone, there we go, and then another 2 seed beads. So again, the bicone is in the middle, but now with 2 seed beads on each side. And then I'm going to jump to the first SuperDuo in this next section, again in the outer hole, and then pull this all the way through, and that's going to fit just perfectly in between there. So obviously everything is still loose because we're working our way upwards, but it's going to get kind of tighter and tighter as we go and add more beads, because it's going to end up having the SuperDuos also then stay in place in the position that we want them to, rather than flopping around like this, because that's what adding this outer edge does as well. It makes them stay in place and obviously become a flat length. Adding the same beads here, 2 seed beads, 1 bicone and 2 seed beads, and then jumping over to the next section, the very first SuperDuo in that, through the open hole that hasn't been used yet. And there we go. You can see this is going to bridge that nicely. And then we're just going to continue here by adding 1 bicone in between each of the SuperDuos on this section, and it's going to start to fill it out just perfectly. Grab another one here and go through the last one of these. Pull it all the way through. You can see these bicones fit perfectly in between the SuperDuos when they're sitting like this. On the other side, do the exact same thing. A bicone in between each of the SuperDuos until we get to the other side of this section of them. And then just the last one here. Just need to get it out so I can actually get through the hole. There we go. And then pull that all the way through. So it's going to end up sitting in between those SuperDuos. Just avoid getting caught on anything. There we go. And now we're at the point where we kind of finished off that section. So we need to repeat now the in-between sections. So that is just where we add. Just get my needle ready here. Getting a bit tangled up, get it under. Working on one side at a time. We'll just add the 2 seed beads, 1 bicone, and then the 2 seed beads again, and then jump over to the next section and pull it all the way through. And bridging that gap again, so it's going to fit just perfectly. So continue doing this all the way to the other end. So then at this other end here, we then obviously want to finish off the same way we started out. So that means we just need to add, after that very last SuperDuo, 1 seed bead, and then 1 bicone, and then 1 seed bead. Again, so the bicone is in the middle, and then go from that SuperDuo, and then jump through, go into the second seed bead out of those 3. So basically the middle one. And just get through it here, because that's the one we came out of in the other end. Just start out the edge here. Go through that, and also through the next seed bead. And then you might as well, while you're at it, go through the wire protector as well. So just like this. Now we're all the way at the other end with both threads and needles. And then what we can just do is make sure we pull this a little bit tight now, because that's going to kind of tighten up the whole bracelet a bit. So obviously you want to still make sure that anything isn't buckling up all the way throughout. But you can just kind of grab hold of the threads and then help push the beads downwards a little bit. It just makes it a little bit tighter and more sturdy. without buckling up, obviously. So make sure of that, and then we're at this end. What it's then time to do is come back around again, and that's where I want to add the middle. Now you don't have to do that. You could quite easily finish off the bracelet after this section if you like the way this looks, and then just finish it off the same way that I'm going to do later. But to get to the middle, I want to add those montees in the middle there to add a bit extra bling and kind of fill out these little gaps. I'm going to, just like the other times, bring my thread and needles around to the opposite side than where they're coming out from. Then I'm going to go through all those seed beads on that side, and then I'm also going to make my way down towards this section, the first section. So in this case, I've managed to go through the 3 seed beads, the SuperDuo, and then that inner seed bead right there that we added before those 3 SuperDuos in the middle. So we're now going through the inner part again. So bring that all the way through and making sure again the thread goes into the well. But then we actually need to get through the next SuperDuo as well in the inner hole. So just right through that one. So you can just get through as many beads at a time as you can. Doesn't really matter how many you take at a time. Again, I'm just pulling this tight and grabbing hold of that wire protector, and then pulling that thread nice and tight. Then the other one comes around to the opposite side, through the wire protector and the seed beads, that SuperDuo, and the little seed bead on the other side of that SuperDuo. And because these SuperDuos on the edge kind of are curving upwards, you can't necessarily that easily get through that at the same time, so I just take that SuperDuo by itself. So we're basically coming out right after the first SuperDuo on each side, right before the middle one out of them. And then pull that all the way through. And then again, just make sure that everything is as tight as we want this to be. So now I'm in this position here, and this is then where we want to bring in the montees. So I'm then just going to change the direction here of how I work with it. So bringing it this way around, and then I have those threads coming out on each their own side in the right place. We now want to bring in the very first montees there, and this is what they look like. So you have a front to them, and then on the back, that's where the holes are, but in a little cross. So that's the nature of these beads, you could say. Then what I'm going to do is take one needle first of all. I'm just starting with the right one, and go through in one direction here, and I'm going through making sure to do that with the front of it pointing upwards, because that's what we want to make sure of now. At the moment there isn't really a front and a back to this, it's all the same, but when we're adding these in there will be a front and a back. So I want to make sure that I add these in the same way all the way along. So I add that in one way, and then I want to take the other needle from the other side and add that in the opposite direction there, so it turns into that cross. So it comes through just like that. Pull that all the way through. So they're going through the thread from each their own side, but then coming out at opposite sides as well. Then I'm pulling this down, and that's going to sit right there perfectly in the middle. But then obviously we need to move on. So to do that and fasten it completely, what we need to do is, this thread coming out towards the right now is the one that's coming from the left side, but it's going towards the right, so I need to bring that over to the right side. So I'm skipping that middle SuperDuo out of these 3. Then I want to go straight through the next one in the inner hole still, and also through the next seed bead. So again, now we just go through as many beads as we can in one go. So you can just go through them too. Just do that and then bring it all the way out. And then that pulls it down. I'm just going to do the same on the other side. Skip that middle SuperDuo and go through the inner hole in the next one. And then also go through the next seed bead. So now I'm basically also just following the thread path that we've already created. And I'm also going through that middle SuperDuo, where we're now going through both holes in that one. And then as I'm pulling this tight, obviously you want to do that now while we're here, so we don't have the loose thread down there. Pull that tight, and it's going to fit in and slot in just perfectly there. And you have those threads running in between the SuperDuos. So that's how we add in the montees, really. So you just now want to continue the thread path, take one at a time, go through the next seed beads. We're now moving our way all the way in the inner rows and through the next SuperDuo. So we're not on the edge with this, we're just staying on the inner ones, moving up towards the next place, again through the next seed bead as well, to come out through that very first SuperDuo in this section in the inner hole, just like that. Same with the other one, come through the same one, and then we add the next montees in the exact same way that I did there, and that just adds the extra bling right to the middle and gives a completely different look. But obviously you can leave it out, like I said, it's completely up to you. Do that all the way up to the other end until we have them all filled in. And this is then what it looks like when I've added in all the montees there, all the way to the other end. And then at this end, what there's really left to do is now get back around here. So I've already done it with one thread. I'm going to take the other one, again move to the opposite side, and then come out from that second bead again, so the middle one out of those three, because we now need to start tying off the thread. It's getting a bit tight there. Just make sure that the thread goes down into the little well. So just pulling it down here, nice and carefully. Just double checking, because once we start tying this off, if one thread has been caught a little bit on the side, we can't really get it back into the well. So making sure it's all in place. And then to start tying it off, I'm going to move to the outer edge because I feel like that's the easiest and you got the most space. So I'm going to go follow that thread path that we've already done. Just get the thread out of the way here. Go into these little seed beads first of all, that then connects to the outer holes in the SuperDuos. And I'm just going to go through the one seed bead to begin with. So I'm going to come out before the bicone, because then I want to start tying off knots here already. So I'm just going to show you how I do it here. It's going to be the same all the way and also on the other side. And you really just, if you have a bit of thread left, use whatever thread you have left and tie several knots. What I'm then going to do is I'm coming out before that bicone, and I'm then going to go underneath and come up in that gap between the bicone and the inner SuperDuo and pull my thread through, but not all the way, leaving just a little bit of a loop. Put my finger through it, and then just want to make sure it's sitting properly. There we go. Then I'm going to go back through this loop again with my needle and through it twice, and then pull my needle through the loop and then pull the loop down tight now, and just make sure that this knot that we made is going to sit in that space where we basically brought the needle out, so still right in front of that bicone. And then I'm going to go through the bicone with my needle and get through to the next place where I want to make a new knot. So I'm just going through the bicone, the seed bead, and also through the SuperDuo. You could also come up before the SuperDuo and make a knot there. It's really up to you. You got space for it. But I'm going to be doing it in front of the bicones, because then you can pull the knot. I've pulled it here and it kind of goes inside of the bead. So I'm just going to do that a few more times, bringing the needle through. Make sure you leave that loop and then go through the loop with your needle twice, pull it down so we've made that knot, and then go through the bead that you're in front of. Continue following that thread path on the outer edge. Moving on to the next place where you want to make a knot. So just like this, get it all the way through here. Just a little bit tight. Sometimes if it's a bit tight, it can help taking a pair of chain nails or flat nails and grab onto the needle with that, because you get a much better grip, and then you can pull it all the way through. And there we go, and I pull the knot into the bead. So that's what you just want to keep doing here. Obviously the same with the other side. And then once you've used up your thread or you've made enough, then you just cut down the excess right close to where it's coming out from. But make sure you don't cut it right next to a knot, that you go through some beads after the very last knot. And this is then the bracelet finished. So it looks like this. So you can see you have all the nice bling all the way along, and the SuperDuos as well. Gives this really nice look. And then we just use these wire protectors on the ends to add the clasp that we want. So I've attached my lotto claw clasp here and then the extender chain on the other end. So that's just what it looks like. So it's nice and secure as well and comfortable to wear. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial here for this bracelet, and thank you very much for watching.